Today's project is this cute watercolour doggy with a Christmas card and a simple season's greetings message. The dog is a stamp by Katzelkraft, and basically I've coloured him in using some Arteza watercolour pens, and I've edged the card with some tumbled glass distress ink and mounted him on some red card and then onto a DL card blank. You can see he's super cute. There's a lot of detail in the jumper. I've added a simple line to ground him and some subtle blue blending around the edge. But if you want to see how I did this, then stay tuned. So let me show you how I've made this card. You can see I've already stamped the image. It's a cute red rubber stamp from katzelkraft. Which is, I think, a German or French company. French, I think. This is the packet it came in. It's called Xmas Dog. And basically, I've taken the stamp, I've cut it out, and I've mounted it on some sticky stamping foam so that it holds onto my stamping platform. And then I've used a simple woodware greeting, which is from this set, which is called Christmas Cheer. And I've used the season's greetings. These are nice in a sort of a slight Art Deco style, but two different fonts, which is quite nice. So I've stamped the two together and I've heat embossed them so that I've got a slightly raised edge, which is easier to colour too. So I'm going to colour this. I'm using my Arteza watercolour pens, which come in a lovely set. I find these are really good for colouring. And I'm going to do quite a lot of pen on block and water. So I'm using a water pen. This is the one that actually came with the Arteza set. You can buy more fancy ones, but I'm still using the basic one, and that's several years in. So I'm going to start by colouring the dog. So I've got two different shades of brown here, and I'm going to start with the lighter shade first. So I put a little bit of brown on my acrylic block, and then I take my pen and I literally dab a tiny little bit of water into it and mix it. And then I start colouring basically. So just use your brush and paint as per normal. I've got quite a lot of water on this brush, so I'm getting basically a panel, a flat colour. So I'm laying down basically a body of colour. And then what I'll do is I'll then use either the same colour again, or I'll slightly amend that colour by adding the other one to then create areas of interest within that colour. So think of this as your first layer, basically. So I'm adding a layer of brown that I'm then going to work with. So I'm painting all the dog, all the paws. I'm going to do the neck and the ears. But you can see in the stamped image, these dots, these lines, etc., that's calling out for you to highlight it somehow. And that highlighting in this respect is painting with a slightly different colour. That gives the creature more depth. Don't worry, I've painted the eye over there. I will go over with white at the end just to give him a nice bright eye. So literally paint everything. There we go, that's all the brown. I always go over and do a second coat, especially on the edges, because you'll find sometimes when you stamp it leaves quite a lot of ink on the page and you don't always get full coverage. So just give it another go, paying particular attention to the edges and these areas where there's lots of action going on within the stamped image. Now, as this is an animal, the texture of an animal is not perfect. So leaving spots, creating areas of interest, creating blotches, etc., does not look out of place, which is an absolute delight for colouring because you can't really go wrong. But obviously follow the lines of the stamp, follow the clues that the person who designed the stamp gave you in terms of where to lay that colour down and obviously how to sit it. So that's my base layer for the dog. You can see he's now got a layer of brown all over him. I'm just going to blow gently just to let that dry a little bit. or I could use my heat tool. But that will dry relatively quickly. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to now go in with the second colour. This is a slightly darker brown. So I'm going to not add more water. I'm just going to mix the brown that I had with that brown, basically. Always keep a piece of kitchen towel next to you. This is quite useful for taking water off. When you do the second layer, you don't need as much. So we're going to go in here. Now you see that's still wet, so you're getting a little bit of spread, which is okay. The fact that we heat embossed after we stamped means we've got an image to work up to, an edge, sorry, to work up to. So I'm just basically going in there on the edges, on those areas where there are highlights in the stamp, just laying down a second layer of colour. And at the moment you can see that colour is sitting quite proud of the other one. But what I will do is then go in and almost merge the two together. So I've laid down a little bit more colour there. I'm taking that colour off my brush. I'm not cleaning the brush. And then I'm literally just dabbing over the surface and I'm sort of blending the two together. In the areas where I've got any hard edges, I will go over it and pull them together. In the areas where I want there to be shade or I want there to be the effect of texture, I will leave it. Picking up a little bit more ink as you need it, just dotting it down in places where you want to get an area of interest. I find this really relaxing. I love colouring. Colouring is one of my favourite parts of card making. I'm just going to blend that in a little bit on his face. But this is, and you need a decent watercolour paper because it's taking a lot of water. If you don't use a decent watercolour paper, you'll find the paper starts breaking up on the surface. The fibres will actually start to come apart. And then similarly, use what's left again, just to go back in over those areas you're really wanting to highlight. Lay down another little layer of colour. We're working our way on the dark edges. There we go. And when you want to clean your brush, all you do is squeeze the brush, water will come out, and then you can just use your piece of kitchen towel, and that's now clean. Okay, I'm going to use my heat tool just to speed things up, so apologies for the noise. There we go. Not perfectly dry, but dry enough, hopefully. Okay, second thing I'm going to do, so I've done my two browns, so I typically put those two pens out of the way. I'm now going to go in with the red, so just put some red down on your block, and I'm going to paint his hat in a cheerful Christmas red. So always work to an edge. So if you are right-handed, you typically pull from right to left. If you're left-handed, I think it's the reverse, but obviously I'm not, so I don't know. But basically, we're just laying down the colour. Typically go around the edges and then blend it into the middle. You see we're getting nice colour there. I'm just going to do the edge of the hat there in the same colour, but just leave it a little bit lighter. And then take your colour again and go back onto the areas on the stamp where it's darker, crying out to be accented. Just going to quickly dry that again. Go back in again with the red. just on those slightly darker areas. Maybe at the back of the hat there as well, and just on the edges. Okay, clean your brush. Okay, I'm going to do the bell on the hat with a brown. This is sort of like a ginger colour. I'm actually going to, in this instance, just use the actual watercolour brush, which you can do. Find a good edge. And just go for it. That way you get a thicker, darker colour. There we go, that's done. Now the jumper I'm going to do in blue, but obviously there's a hell of a lot of detail on here. I'm not going to do all the individual layers. What I'm going to do, I'm going to lay down a basic light blue across the whole thing, and then I'm going to do a darker blue on the cuffs basically. So we can paint quite freely, otherwise you'd be here all day making one card that you sell for £3.50. So basically just lay down a layer of colour across the whole thing, work your way around the edges, turn the project, remember, don't try and work backwards. And then colour the middle. Now, even though we're colouring it all one colour, we can still give it a little bit of depth by going in with the colour a little bit more at the edges on any particular areas where there would be shade or shadow. So look, the belly of the dog hair underneath, just give that maybe a little bit more blue. Pick out odd bits of the pattern as well, maybe. This is a cute image. I mean, you could spend hours colouring it. Now, you see I've gone slightly over the edge there. I don't know if you can see that, but just here. How I'm going to fix that? Clean my brush. Make sure the brush is absolutely clean. And then literally without any colour on it, just colour that area and dab it away. You can see that has fixed that issue. This is the good thing about watercolour paints and these watercolour pens, on this paper particularly. So we've got a layer of blue there with a few little highlights. You can keep adding more if you want. I mean, you could spend hours and paint this and colour each section in individually, which would look lovely, but it just takes too long. There we go, that's enough. And then I'm going to lay down this other blue. So this blue is sapphire blue, and you can see straight away it's a lot darker. I'm not going to water it down. I'm just going to use the water that's on my brush, and then I'm going to just colour this collar. These cuffs at the bottom. And I'm leaving quite a lot of colour on here because I want this to be noticeably darker. And then this cuff at the bottom. There we go, that looks quite cute. Clean your brush. And then I'm going to paint the letter. This is a sort of a green tea colour. I just wanted like a pale different colour, but I didn't want to use a brown because the dog is predominantly brown. So I'm just going to go in here with a layer of green tea. Actually, that's very pale. What I'm going to do is just go around the edge with the actual pen. Now I should get a slightly darker edge, and then I can fade it out in the middle. There we go. And then just check it over really and have a look at it. I think it's coloured fine. Yeah, I'm going to do the eye just while I remember. So I've got somewhere here on my desk a white, that's not white, that's silver. Let's not use silver. No, in fact, that's silver, I think. That's the silver one. Right, I'm going to take my white jelly pen just while I remember and just do his eye. There we go. And now I can finish the card. So one thing I always find, and you'll see I stamped this on the back and I got a mark on it, which is why I then turned it over and used it. You'll never see it once it's stuck down. This is obviously clean and simple card making. I'm not putting a background in. I'm not doing anything fancy around the edges. But you do need to ground your item, I find. So what I would do in this scenario, first of all, I'm just going to give it a quick dry. There we go, that's now dry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to draw a line underneath the dog just to give it a ground. Now look, I've just somehow splattered blue on here, but I'm just going to use the water pen and the water that's in it just to take that off. And then a clean piece of kitchen towel. There we go, you'd never notice that. Okay, so I'm putting this down on my cutting mat grid, and then I'm just moving it up because I want to make sure that my line is parallel with the ground, but I do want to get it roughly with his feet so that it looks like he's grounded. So I've got here a fine line drawing pen, any will do, and I'm basically just going to go along underneath. So I'm just going to really lightly go along to the first paw, along between the back two, between the front two, and then I'm just going to pull it along at the front and let it fade out. Here we go, and that just gives you a little bit of grounding for your pet. I like this. I came up with this idea, 2 different stamp sets, but to me he's walking towards Season's Greetings. So I'm now going to edge the card. So what I've done, I've got some tumbled glass distress ink, and I'm just going to go very gently around the edge just to give it a little bit of edge, a little bit of 3D. It's going to be quite subtle, but it does make a difference on the actual finished card. I'm going to use a piece of scrap paper. It's better to not touch the project too many times. So just going very gently around the edge. This is Tumbled Glass Distress Ink from Ranger. Good old Tim Holtz. It just gives it a little bit of interest at the edge. Stops it being on a completely white or cream base. This is very gentle pressure I'm using in quite a fast circle, but obviously I don't want it to be too dark. Corners a little bit, and then along the bottom. The good thing with these dome blenders is you can also work on an angle, which is what I'm doing. I'm catching it mostly with the bottom half of the blender. Obviously pull towards you or push away, but mainly in a circular motion. This just gives a very subtle edge to the card. What I'm then going to do is put some ink, load up my brush, and just go along the edges of the card. It doesn't do an awful lot, but it just stops you having a white edge. It reinforces the hint of blue. There we go, that's done. Looking quite cute, and you can subtly see slight darkness around the edge. What I'm then going to do, I'm going to use some double-sided tape, which I think I'm about to run out of. And I'm going to edge my card with tape. You could do this with glue, but I find glue sometimes ruffles the paper, so I'm doing it with tape. Just quickly grabbed another one out of my drawer and I'm going to peel these off. I'm adding a layer underneath this in red, which will match the hat of the dog. Go. I'm going to find a decent edge and just pop that down. I only want a thin border. There we go, ground one corner, get that roughly level, and then take that along, pressing down. Now I'm going to just quickly clean my cutting mat because I have just done blue ink on there. What I normally do with ink is I usually work in the bottom right hand corner, so that I know that's the area to avoid. But because I've done this quite close up, because I wanted you to see the colouring, I've actually done it in the middle of my mat, so my mat is probably dirty at the moment. I'm just giving that a quick heat, just to dry that off. I don't want to ruin your project at this stage. It should be dry enough now. Okay, and then I'm going to cut this using my scalpel. Just eyeballing that so it looks about even. And similarly at this end. Apologies for the light flickering, but I've actually got my blinds open. It's a beautiful day here in the UK, and it's far too nice to not have the window open. There we go, so he's now looking quite cute. What I will do at this stage is just go along the edge with my bone folder. I always do that on cut edges, just to flatten down any lifted edge. And then I'm going to pop him onto a number 20, a DL card blank, which I've got here. I'm going to fold him down. Just use my bone folder to make sure that's level. There we go, and then pop some more double-sided on. This time round I will do the bunny ears trick. Just to make sure I get that in the center. The good thing about this tape is this is the cheapest, nastiest tape you can buy. I think it's, I don't know, £1.50 for 3 rolls, I think, off Amazon. But it's super cheap. But the good thing about it is you just rip it. You don't need to cut it. So you just roughly stretch it out how long you need it, tear it, you get a rough edge, which then helps you actually stick the thing down. So I can't be dealing with having to cut tape. So bunny ears, lifting up with my tweezers as usual. Those who know me will know I live and die by my tweezers. Okay, there we go, we're ready. And then we just need to line that up on the paper. So get yourself roughly even. It's just quite hard to do when I've got a camera right in the way I'm looking. Okay, that's looking about right, I think. pull the tapes off. Hopefully it's in the right place. You never quite know. And then again, I would always go around with the bone folder just to make sure that that is completely stuck down and we've got no lifted edges. There we go. That's my card for today. Very, very cute little doggy with a Christmas card. I've grounded him on just a simple line and a very simple season's greetings. This is the second one I've made like this. I've actually stamped a batch of about 6. I'm just going to spend the next few days or however long colouring those in, and then they will be listed on my Etsy store. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you like my videos, you like my tutorials, please like and subscribe to my channel. And there are other tutorials on there showing different techniques, different cards I've made, etc. So if you like my style and you're interested and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time. Thank you.